Ryan's office revenge. We're eliminating your position effective immediately. The words hit me like a 2-ton steel beam falling from a 10-story scaffold. I sat in that sterile conference room, fluorescent lights humming overhead, 15 pairs of eyes staring at me like I'd just been diagnosed with something contagious. Henry Kane, our 35-year-old CEO with his fancy Wharton MBA and zero field experience, delivered the news with all the warmth of a January morning in Cleveland. My name is Roger Walsh, and until that Thursday afternoon in March, I was the Senior Quality Control Manager at Kane Construction Solutions. 58 years old, 25 years in the business, and apparently too old school for the new corporate culture that valued quarterly profits over worker safety. Budget restructuring, Henry continued, straightening his $200 tie that probably cost more than most of my guys made in a day. We need to streamline operations for maximum efficiency. What he really meant was I'd been asking too many inconvenient questions about safety protocols being ignored to meet impossible deadlines. Questions like why we were using grade B steel when the blueprints called for grade A, or why fall protection equipment was being delayed to save 3 days on a project timeline. The conference room felt like it dropped 20 degrees as my colleagues shifted uncomfortably in their ergonomic chairs. Most of them were good people who'd been beaten down by the corporate machine. But Shane Griffin, my former protege who I'd trained from day one when he was fresh out of engineering school, leaned back in his chair with this look of relief plastered across his face, like he was glad the axe finally fell on someone else. That hurt more than Henry's corporate double talk and fancy buzzwords. I gathered my worn leather notebook slowly, feeling every one of those 58 years in my bones. 2 years of watching corner cutting become standard operating procedure. 2 years of seeing Shane present my safety innovations as his own brilliant ideas to impress the board. 2 years of being labeled resistant to positive change and inflexible when I pointed out that workers were getting hurt because we were rushing jobs to hit bonuses. The worst part? I'd seen this coming. Last month, when Miguel Hernandez fell 15 feet because his safety harness was a cheap knockoff that snapped under pressure, I'd filed a detailed incident report. Real detailed. The kind that asked uncomfortable questions about procurement policies and vendor relationships. The kind that mentioned Miguel had a wife and 3 kids, and that this accident was completely preventable if we'd used the equipment I'd recommended 6 months earlier. That report never made it to the insurance company. Somehow it got lost in processing and replaced with a sanitized version that blamed worker error and failure to follow established protocols. Miguel got a small settlement and a handshake. I got called into HR for creating unnecessary documentation and exceeding my reporting responsibilities. I stood up slowly, straightened my tie, a simple polyester one I'd worn to countless safety meetings, and looked Henry dead in the eye. "Actually, you just did me a favor," I said, my voice steadier than I felt. The words came from somewhere deep, the place where 25 years of experience lives. Good luck with your streamlining efforts. The confusion on Henry's face as I walked out was almost worth the public humiliation. Almost. Behind me, I could hear nervous shuffling and whispered conversations starting up. Nobody knew what to say when a company veteran gets executed in front of the whole team. In my F-150 pickup, a 2018 with 180,000 honest miles on it, I sat in the Kane Construction parking lot for exactly 5 minutes and let myself feel the rage. Not sadness, not self-pity. Pure, cold anger. The kind that comes from watching 25 years of blood, sweat, and genuine expertise get tossed aside by some kid who thinks construction is just numbers on an Excel spreadsheet. The memory that kept replaying wasn't today's firing. It was 3 months ago when Shane leaned across his new corner office desk, the one that should have been mine when Bill Henderson retired after 30 years. Shane had this patronizing smile as he delivered the message from upstairs. "The board thinks you're stuck in the past, Roger," he'd said, adjusting his wire-rimmed glasses that made him look like he was playing dress-up in Daddy's office. "Maybe try being more flexible about changing industry standards." What he really meant was stop asking why we were using substandard rebar on the Morrison apartment complex. Stop questioning why safety inspections were being conducted by guys who'd never worked a day on an actual construction site. Stop making mountains out of molehills when I pointed out that someone was going to get seriously hurt, or worse. The next week, my access to project meetings mysteriously disappeared. My safety recommendations started getting reviewed by committees that never met. My direct reports were reassigned to other departments. The message was crystal clear. Stay in your lane, keep your mouth shut, or pay the price. What Henry and Shane didn't know was that my sister Patricia, who'd worked in HR at Midwest Regional Construction for 15 years, had been fielding calls about me for months. Word gets around fast in this business when you're the guy who actually knows what he's talking about. Industry contacts had noticed my questions at safety conferences, my detailed articles in trade publications like Construction Safety Today and Industrial Risk Management. They'd been quietly watching my work, not the watered-down, corporate-approved versions that Shane presented to the executive team, but the real stuff. 3 months ago, Patricia had approached me after Sunday dinner at Mom's house with an offer that seemed too good to be true. A consortium of regional construction firms wanted to create an independent safety consulting group, and they wanted someone with real field experience to lead it. Not some fresh MBA with theories, but someone who'd actually strapped on a hard hat and climbed scaffolding. Someone who understood that behind every safety protocol was a real person trying to make an honest living and get home to their family in one piece. The catch was I'd need to build my own team from scratch. Find people who shared the vision that worker safety wasn't negotiable, regardless of deadlines or profit margins. People who understood that doing things right the first time was always cheaper than dealing with accidents, lawsuits, and the human cost of preventable injuries. As I pulled out of the Kane construction parking lot for what I knew would be the last time, my phone buzzed against the dashboard. Text message from Patricia. Heard what happened from Linda in accounting. Ready to build that dream team now? I typed back with fingers that were steadier than they had any right to be. Absolutely. Let's change this industry. That weekend, I made 8 careful phone calls, each one to someone who'd been overlooked, undervalued, or pushed aside by the new corporate mentality that valued speed over safety and PowerPoint presentations over practical experience. My first call was to Alan Torres, a site supervisor with 22 years of experience who'd been passed over for promotion 3 times because he wouldn't compromise on safety standards. Alan was the kind of guy who'd shut down a $1 million project if he spotted a single loose cable that could trip a worker. Management saw him as an obstacle to efficiency. I saw him as exactly the kind of person who should be making the decisions. "I'm not calling about what happened yesterday," I said when he picked up on the second ring. His voice sounded tired, like he'd been expecting bad news. "Everyone in the business knows, Roger." Henry made sure word got around fast. Said it was a learning opportunity for the whole company. That stung, but it didn't surprise me. Public executions send a message to anyone else thinking about rocking the boat. Doesn't matter now. I'm calling because I'm building something new, and I need people who understand that cutting corners kills people. Real people with families. Long pause. I could hear machinery in the background. Alan was probably at his weekend side job, fixing equipment for a small contractor who actually valued his expertise. "What exactly are you building, Roger?" I explained the consortium's vision. An independent firm that would revolutionize safety protocols in regional construction. No more looking the other way when developers pushed dangerous deadlines. No more hiding accident reports to protect quarterly earnings. No more treating experienced workers like disposable resources. This isn't about revenge, I told him, though part of me knew that wasn't entirely true. This is about doing things right, about building projects where nobody gets hurt because someone wanted to save a few days or a few $1,000s. What's the compensation? Alan always cut to the chase. He'd been burned too many times by empty promises and good intentions. When I told him, nearly 45% more than Kane was paying him, plus equity in the company, he was quiet for so long I thought the call had dropped. Roger, that's serious money. When do I start? I made 7 more calls like that over the next 48 hours. Each conversation followed the same pattern. I shared the vision, offered proper compensation and respect, and watched years of accumulated frustration transform into genuine excitement. To Dennis Park, whose innovative fall protection systems were deemed too expensive by bean counters who'd never worn a hard hat in their lives. Dennis had developed a modular safety harness system that could prevent 80% of fall injuries, but Kane's procurement department said the $200 per unit cost was not aligned with budgetary constraints. They'd rather pay $50 for equipment that failed when you actually needed it. To Susan Foster, whose project management skills were consistently overlooked because she wouldn't fudge timeline reports to make executives look good. Susan had a talent for seeing 3 steps ahead, identifying potential problems before they became expensive disasters. But her realistic schedules that accounted for proper safety procedures were always adjusted by people who'd never managed anything more complex than a conference room meeting. To Linda Rodriguez, a data analyst whose reports repeatedly showed direct correlation between rushed construction schedules and workplace accidents. Linda had the kind of mind that could spot patterns in numbers that told stories, ugly stories, about what happened when profit margins mattered more than human safety. Her analysis had been buried so many times she'd started keeping personal copies of everything. Each person I called had a story. Marcus Webb, a 15-year veteran electrician who'd been written up for excessive safety checks that delayed projects by a few hours. Never mind that his thoroughness had prevented 2 potential electrocutions and a small building fire. Sarah Kim, a structural engineer who'd been sidelined after questioning whether a 40-story building could really be completed 6 months ahead of schedule without compromising foundation work. The pattern was clear. Kane Construction and companies like them were systematically pushing out anyone who prioritized worker safety over speed and profits. They wanted teams of yes-men who'd rubber-stamp dangerous decisions and keep their mouths shut when people got hurt. "Why would anyone follow you?" Henry had asked during my last performance review, his tone suggesting the question was rhetorical. "You're not a natural leader, Roger. You're too rigid, too focused on details that don't matter to the big picture." He was about to find out exactly how wrong he was. By Sunday evening, I had verbal commitments from all 8 people. The talent that had been suppressed, marginalized, and discarded by the corporate machine, now united with a common purpose and a chance to prove their worth. Monday morning, Henry Kane arrived at his corner office to find 8 resignation letters waiting on his assistant's desk. 8 empty desks scattered throughout the building. 8 out-of-office email replies directing urgent project matters to his personal inbox. I could picture him walking through the office, slowly putting the pieces together, realizing that I'd just gutted his most experienced staff in a single coordinated strike. The beauty of it was the timing. Kane had 4 major projects in critical phases, all dependent on the expertise of people who were now officially gone. The Morrison apartment complex that needed Linda's structural analysis. The downtown office building where Marcus was halfway through the electrical systems. The waterfront development that required Dennis's specialized fall protection knowledge. By Tuesday, Henry's phone was ringing constantly. Project managers calling in panic, clients demanding explanations, insurance adjusters asking pointed questions about continuity of safety oversight. By Wednesday, he couldn't contain himself anymore. My phone rang at 7:15 a.m. while I was having coffee with Patricia, planning our first team meeting. "What the hell did you do?" Henry's voice was high and strained, like a man watching his career implode in real time. "I did exactly what you taught me to do," I replied, keeping my voice level and professional. "I recognized valuable assets and acted accordingly. This is corporate sabotage. You can't just steal half my senior staff." "I didn't steal anyone, Henry. I offered them opportunities to use their skills and experience somewhere they'd be valued. Funny how quickly people jump ship when they're offered basic respect. You can't just—" He sputtered like an engine running out of gas. "Goodbye, Henry. Good luck with your restructuring efforts. I'm sure you'll figure out how to manage those projects with all that streamlined efficiency you're so fond of." I hung up and turned to Patricia, who was grinning over her coffee cup. "How did that feel?" she asked. "Like the first day of the rest of my life. We rented space in a converted warehouse on the industrial side of town, 5,000 square feet of exposed brick and natural light, the complete opposite of Kane's windowless corporate boxes where safety reports went to die. The previous tenant had been a machine shop, so the concrete floors were already built to handle heavy equipment and serious work. For the first time in years, I felt like I could breathe. The space needed work, but that was part of the appeal. Alan spent the first week installing proper electrical systems. No shortcuts, everything up to code, and then some. Dennis designed a state-of-the-art safety equipment testing area where we could actually demonstrate the gear we recommended instead of just talking about it in PowerPoint slides. Susan mapped out workflow areas that made sense for people who actually had to get things done. "Welcome to day one," I told my team, as we gathered around a solid oak conference table that Linda had rescued from a demolition site. Real wood, built to last, not some particle board corporate furniture that falls apart after 3 years. We have 6 months to change how this industry thinks about safety. What if we fail? What if we can't make this work? It was the question everyone was thinking. We'd all left secure jobs, burned professional bridges, walked away from steady paychecks and health benefits. The weight of that responsibility sat heavy in the room. Then we fail, having tried to save lives instead of quarterly profit margins, I answered, looking each person in the eye. "But I don't think we will. Every one of you is here because you've been solving problems for years while other people took the credit. Now you get to put your name on the solutions. The first month was organized chaos, but good chaos. Ideas flowed without the constant corporate refrain of 'that's not how we've always done it,' or 'we need to think about the budget implications.' We challenged assumptions, built on each other's concepts, threw out decades of outdated practices. Marcus developed a modular electrical safety system that could be adapted for any construction site in half the time of traditional methods. Sarah created structural assessment tools that identified potential problems before the first concrete was poured. Linda built data models that could predict accident probability based on weather, timeline pressure, and crew experience levels. Meanwhile, Kane Construction was hemorrhaging credibility faster than a burst pipe. Clients started calling, asking why their most trusted project managers had suddenly disappeared. Subcontractors who'd worked with our team for years wanted to know where we'd gone and whether they could follow us to the new company. Henry issued a company-wide memo about exciting transition opportunities and bringing in fresh perspectives to meet evolving industry needs. Corporate speak for we have no idea how to replace the people who actually knew what they were doing. But there was a problem Henry couldn't solve with fancy language. You can't memo your way out of real expertise. Without Alan's site management keeping projects on track, without Dennis's safety protocols preventing accidents, without Susan's scheduling that actually accounted for reality, without Linda's analysis that spotted problems before they became disasters, without 8 key people who'd been making the impossible deadlines actually work, the truth started surfacing. For the first time in 3 years, Kane's quarterly safety report reflected reality instead of creative accounting. And reality included 3 serious accidents that could have been prevented with proper oversight. A crane operator suffered a broken leg when a cable snapped, the same type of cable that Dennis had flagged as substandard 6 months earlier. 2 electricians were hospitalized with burns from a panel explosion that Marcus had predicted in a report that got lost in review. A concrete pour went wrong when structural calculations were rushed, requiring a complete rebuild that cost $2.5 million and put the project 8 weeks behind schedule. The regional construction press noticed. Safety concerns. Mount at Kane Construction read the headline in Midwest Builder magazine. Are profit pressures compromising worker protection? Asked Industrial Safety Today. Their insurance rates spiked 35% overnight, and their bonding company started asking uncomfortable questions about management continuity. But I wasn't focused on Kane's problems. I was too busy building solutions. Our team found its rhythm quickly. Linda transformed complex accident data into 3-dimensional visualizations that told stories even insurance executives could understand. Dennis developed relationships with forward-thinking developers who recognized that proper safety protocols saved money in the long run. Susan created realistic project timelines that accounted for human factors instead of treating workers like machines. Alan trained a new generation of site supervisors who understood that real leadership meant protecting the people under your supervision. We weren't just colleagues. We became a crew in the truest sense, the kind that has each other's backs, that argues honestly about the best way to solve problems, that celebrates victories with pizza and beer instead of wine and cheese receptions. We worked long hours because the work mattered, not because some executive demanded FaceTime in the office. 4 months into our venture, Linda made the breakthrough that changed everything. We were reviewing accident data from across the region, looking for patterns that might help us develop better training programs. The problem isn't just individual companies cutting corners, she said, pulling up a visualization on the big screen we'd mounted in our main work area. Look at these curves. Every major contractor in the region is using the same broken approach to safety management, and they're all hiding the same types of problems. The data was undeniable. Construction companies across 3 states were systematically underreporting accidents, rushing safety inspections, and using procurement policies that prioritized cost over worker protection. The patterns were so consistent it looked almost coordinated. So we don't just need better safety protocols for individual projects, I said slowly, seeing where Linda's analysis was leading us. We need an entirely new framework for how safety gets measured, reported, and enforced across the entire industry, Dennis finished, his engineering mind already working on the technical challenges. A system that makes it impossible to hide problems, Susan added. Something that rewards actual safety performance instead of creative paperwork. That night we worked until dawn, fueled by coffee and the knowledge that we were onto something bigger than any of us had imagined. We weren't just building a consulting company, we were creating a tool that could transform how an entire industry operated. We called it the Safety Matrix. The Safety Matrix was more than software. It was a complete reimagining of how construction safety could work. Linda's algorithms could process real-time data from job sites, weather conditions, crew fatigue levels, equipment age, timeline pressure, and dozens of other variables that affected accident probability. Dennis integrated it with actual safety equipment, so the system knew when harnesses were overdue for replacement or when fall protection wasn't being used correctly. Marcus built in electrical system monitoring that could predict failures before they happened. Susan created project management modules that automatically adjusted schedules when safety risks exceeded acceptable thresholds, but the real innovation was transparency. Unlike the corporate systems designed to hide problems, our matrix made everything visible. Developers could see exactly how their timeline demands affected worker safety. Insurance companies could access real data instead of sanitized reports. Workers could check their own safety equipment status and report problems without fear of retaliation. Word spread through industry networks like wildfire. Former colleagues began reaching out, asking if we had positions available. I started getting LinkedIn requests from executives who'd never bothered learning my name when we worked in the same building. Equipment manufacturers wanted to integrate their products with our system. Safety training companies sought partnerships. Then came the email that changed everything. Subject line: Partnership Opportunity. Sender: Henry Kane. Your consulting work sounds intriguing. Perhaps we should discuss potential collaboration. The construction industry would benefit from our combined resources and expertise. I showed it to the team during our morning coffee ritual, a tradition that had replaced Kane's pointless status meetings. Are you going to meet with him? Alan asked, clearly skeptical. What do you think? I looked around the group. Dennis adjusted his safety glasses, a habit from 20 years of job sites. He ignored your expertise for years, then fired you in front of everyone. Now he wants to pick your brain because his company's falling apart. Could be desperation, Susan offered. Their last quarterly report was a disaster. Stock price dropped 18% in 2 weeks. Linda pulled up Kane's recent safety statistics on her laptop. Either way, they're in serious trouble. 4 major accidents in 6 months, regulatory investigations, insurance companies asking questions. The Morrison project is 3 months behind schedule and $2.8 million over budget. I made my decision. I'll meet with him. Not to partner, but to understand exactly what he's after. Sometimes you need to look your former enemies in the eye to appreciate how far you've come. The following Tuesday, I sat across from Henry Kane in a downtown diner that served real coffee and honest food, the kind of place where actual working people eat lunch. 4 years of working under his management, and this was our first face-to-face conversation without other people in the room. You've created quite a disruption, Henry began, stirring artificial sweetener into his coffee with the nervous energy of a man under pressure. 8 resignations in one coordinated action. I've never experienced anything like it. 9, I corrected. You fired me first, remember? In front of the entire management team. He had the decency to look uncomfortable. About that decision. Shane may have influenced my thinking more than I initially realized. Interesting admission? So Shane recommended my termination? Henry shifted in his seat, loosening his tie slightly. There were concerns about your resistance to evolving industry practices. My questions about safety shortcuts, I clarified. His eyes widened just enough to confirm what I'd suspected. He'd known exactly what was happening. The substandard materials, the rushed inspections, the pressure on supervisors to ignore problems. He'd been complicit in every corner that got cut. I was never against innovation or efficiency, he backpedaled. But business realities sometimes require adaptive approaches to traditional methodologies. Adaptive approaches, I repeated slowly. Is that corporate speak for ignoring safety protocols when they slow down profit generation? Henry lowered his voice, glancing around the diner like someone might be recording the conversation. That's a serious accusation, Roger. It's not an accusation. It's an observation based on 25 years of field experience and 6 months of data analysis. I set down my coffee cup with deliberate calm. What exactly did you want to discuss today? Your safety matrix system. I've heard remarkable things about its capabilities. Perhaps there's an opportunity for our organizations to combine resources, your innovation with our established market presence and client relationships. There it was. His company was hemorrhaging clients, facing regulatory scrutiny, and struggling with projects that required the expertise of people he'd driven away. He needed our innovation to save what he'd built on a foundation of cutting corners and hiding problems. "We're not interested in collaboration," I said evenly. "Don't be hasty, Roger. The construction industry isn't large enough for competing safety paradigms. Integration would benefit everyone." Something in his tone triggered a warning bell. Not just desperation, there was an underlying threat in his carefully chosen words. "Are you suggesting our success is somehow problematic for the industry, Henry?" He sat back, his corporate smile not quite masking the calculation behind his eyes. "I'm simply pointing out market realities. Independent consulting firms sometimes face unexpected regulatory challenges. Established companies have resources and relationships that can be protective." The threat was subtle, but clear. Kane Construction had board connections, political relationships, and enough influence to create serious problems for a startup that challenged their way of doing business. "I appreciate the warning," I said, standing up and leaving money on the table for my coffee. "But we'll take our chances with doing the right thing." As I walked back to my truck, I called Patricia to report the conversation. "He just threatened us," I explained after describing the meeting. "Not surprising. Kane has connections with several state regulatory agencies and most of the major developers in the region. They could create roadblocks." "What kind of roadblocks?" "I've heard rumors they're approaching your potential clients, offering steep discounts on projects if developers sign exclusive consulting agreements, trying to lock up the market before your matrix gets established." My stomach tightened, but not with fear. With determination. How long before the Regional Safety Summit in Cleveland? "Next week. All the major decision-makers will be there. Perfect timing. If Henry wants to play hardball, let's show the industry what real innovation looks like." That afternoon, I called an emergency team meeting. "We need a full demonstration ready in 5 days, I announced, explaining the situation and Henry's threat. Silence fell over the room like a safety blanket. These were people who'd spent years being told their ideas were impossible, their standards too high, their expectations unrealistic. Dennis was the first to speak. "They tried to bury us." He stood up slowly, that familiar gleam in his eyes. "Time to show them we're seeds, not corpses." Linda cracked her knuckles over her keyboard. 5 impossible days it is. The next week, at the Cleveland Construction Safety Summit, we didn't just present the safety matrix. We revolutionized how an entire industry thought about worker protection. The demonstration showed real-time safety monitoring, predictive accident prevention, and transparent reporting that made hiding problems impossible. The response was immediate and overwhelming. By evening, 6 major developers had signed preliminary agreements. A state regulatory agency requested exclusive consultation on new safety standards. The Regional Construction Association voted to make our system the recommended standard for all member companies. Henry Kane's presentation that morning about incremental safety improvements suddenly looked like exactly what it was: outdated thinking from a company more interested in protecting profits than protecting people. 6 months later, Kane Construction quietly merged with a larger firm. Henry kept his title, but lost his decision-making authority. Shane Griffin found himself managing a single project office in suburban Toledo. Our safety matrix now operates in 8 states, employed by 60% of regional construction firms. We've prevented hundreds of accidents, saved companies millions in insurance costs, and most importantly, We've made it possible for thousands of workers to go home safe to their families every single day. Sometimes the best revenge isn't destroying what hurt you. It's building something so much better that the old way becomes obsolete. At 58, I learned that getting pushed out of one door can be exactly what you need to build the right one. The Safety Matrix team now numbers 22 people, each chosen for their expertise, integrity, and commitment to the principle that no construction deadline is worth a human month. We've built more than a consulting company. We've built a legacy that will outlast all of us, and that's worth more than any corporate title could ever be. Here's what I learned. They can fire you, but they can't fire your experience. And sometimes the greatest gift your enemies give you is the freedom to prove them wrong.